year is 1461, a time of profound turmoil in England's history. The kingdom stands deeply divided, engulfed in the 6th year of the Wars of the Roses, a brutal series of civil wars pitting the noble House of York against the House of Lancaster in a fierce struggle for control of the English throne. Families are torn apart, loyalties fractured, and the land itself seems to weep under the weight of endless conflict, with fields scarred by skirmishes and villages echoing with the cries of the bereaved. The Lancastrians rally behind the reigning King of England, Henry VI, a monarch plagued by profound weakness and indecision. His clear signs of mental illness manifest in bouts of catatonia and erratic behavior, his mental state declining like a fading shadow, leaving his supporters anxious and his rule precarious amid the gathering storm. In stark contrast stands the 18-year-old Edward, the dynamic leader of the Yorkist army, tall, physically fit, and variable in combat, his prowess on the battlefield honed through rigorous training and an unyielding spirit that inspires awe and fear in equal measure. The armies assembled at Towton represent some of the largest forces ever mustered in this era, combining a staggering 50,000 to 65,000 men, a force equivalent to about 1.5% of England's entire population, drawing farmers, knights, and mercenaries from every corner of the realm into this cataclysmic clash. Henry's physical and mental frailty proves a crippling weakness for the Lancastrian cause, sapping morale as rumors of his instability spread like wildfire. He remains sheltered in the fortified city of York alongside his formidable queen, Margaret of Anjou, who directs affairs with iron resolve while he withdraws into seclusion. On the opposing side, the young Edward cuts a tall and imposing figure in his gleaming armor, his presence on the front lines a beacon of vigor and determination, charging into the fray with a preference for bold, offensive tactics that dictate the Yorkists' aggressive plan of action for this pivotal engagement. The battle unfolds on a windswept plateau nestled between the quiet villages of Saxton and Towton, where the open expanse promises both opportunity and peril under a sky heavy with impending doom. This region is primarily agricultural land, dotted with fertile fields now trampled underfoot, wide open areas ideal for grand maneuvers, and a network of small, muddy roads that wind through hedgerows and copses, allowing armies to position themselves with strategic precision amid the rolling countryside. Historical accounts, such as those from the chronicler Warren, suggest that the Duke of Somerset, a staunch fighter for House Lancaster, cunningly ordered a force of mounted spearmen to conceal themselves in the dense thickets of Castle Hill Wood, lying in wait like predators in the underbrush, poised to charge into the Yorkist left flank at the most opportune moment, their horses snorting softly in anticipation as leaves rustle overhead. As the Lancastrians complete their deployment, the scene is one of tense buildup. Line after line of grim-faced soldiers crest the southern ridge of the dale, their banners fluttering in the chill breeze, boots sinking into the soft earth as they form up in disciplined ranks opposite their Yorkist enemies. The air thick with the scent of damp soil and unspoken dread. Snow begins to fall gently at first, then in swirling flurries that blanket the ground in white, turning the battlefield into a slippery, frozen hellscape and blurring visions as flakes sting the eyes of the weary troops. Edward's Yorkist army finds itself outnumbered, the weight of numerical inferiority pressing like a vice, while Norfolk's crucial reinforcements have yet to arrive, their absence a gnawing worry that heightens the stakes. Somerset, confident in his position, opts to stand firm on the higher ground, content to let his foes make the first exhausting advance uphill, his strategy rooted in patience and the advantage of terrain. Thus, The opening move falls to the Yorkists, who seize the initiative with calculated audacity. Noticing the direction and strength of the biting wind howling across the plateau, Lord Fauconberg, the seasoned Yorkist commander of archers, orders all the Yorkist bowmen to step forward from their lines, their longbows creaking under tension. With a unified shout of, "All right!" they unleash a devastating volley of arrows, the shafts whistling through the air propelled by the gale at their backs. The Yorkist missiles soar farther than usual, arcing high before plunging deep into the dense masses of Lancastrian soldiers clustered on the hill slope, eliciting screams of agony as iron tips pierce flesh and armor, blood staining the fresh snow red. The response from the Lancastrian archers proves utterly ineffective, the heavy wind whipping snow directly into their faces, blinding them and throwing off their aim as arrows fall short or veer wildly astray. Frustration mounts among their ranks, faces contorted in rage and desperation as they loose volley after volley until most of their quivers are depleted, leaving a thick, prickly carpet of spent arrows embedded in the frozen ground in front of the Yorkists, a hazardous barrier that would soon snag boots and hinder charges. Coming under this relentless and one-sided attack without any effective counter of their own, the Lancastrian army's patience shatters. Fury boils over as commanders bark orders, and the entire force surges from its elevated position to close in for brutal hand-to-hand combat. Their advance a thunderous roar of footsteps and clashing shields echoing across the dale. Seeing the massive, advancing horde of men bearing down like a tidal wave, the Yorkist archers loose a few final volleys in defiance, arrows thudding into shields and bodies before they retreat swiftly behind their ranks of heavily armed men-at-arms who stand firm with spears and swords at the ready. In a tactical masterstroke, they leave thousands of arrows protruding from the ground, a deadly thicket designed to cripple the Lancastrian charge by impaling feet and slowing momentum amid cries of pain. The Yorkists form their ranks tightly to receive the onslaught, braces of pikes gleaming in the dim light. But suddenly their left flank erupts in chaos under a surprise attack by horsemen thundering out from Castle Hill Wood, lances lowered and horses neighing wildly as they smash into the exposed side. "All right!" flashes the cry again amid the melee, as arrows and bolts fly at short range into the seething mass of men, felling riders and steeds in a frenzy of blood and mud. Edward, the young Yorkist leader, is forced to take personal command amid the bullying turmoil of clashing steel and shouting warriors, his voice rising above the din as he rallies his troops, swinging his sword with ferocious energy to stabilize the faltering line and save the dire situation from collapse. The Lancastrians, emboldened by their numbers, continuously throw fresher waves of men into the fray, their reserves pouring forward with relentless pressure, the air filled with the metallic tang of blood and the guttural grunts of exertion. Gradually, the numerically inferior Yorkist army is pushed back, forced to give ground inch by bloody inch, retreating up the southern ridge as exhaustion sets in, muscles burning and breaths ragged in the freezing air. The fighting continues unabated for hours, a grinding stalemate of hack and slash where neither side yields easily. The snow now churned into a pinkish slush underfoot, bodies piling in heaps that trip the living. It remains indecisive, a brutal tug-of-war teetering on the edge of disaster, until the long-awaited arrival of Norfolk's men turns the tide like a divine intervention. Marching wearily up the old London road, flanked by bare trees and hidden by the undulating terrain, Norfolk's contingent remains concealed from view until they suddenly crest the ridge with a triumphant roar. their fresh banners unfurling as they crash into the Lancastrian left flank with spears and blades, catching the enemy off guard in a whirlwind of surprise and violence. The Lancastrians fight on desperately, their lines wavering but holding for a time. Yet the advantage has irrevocably shifted to the Yorkists, morale surging like a flood as Edward's forces press harder. By the end of the grueling day, as dusk creeps in and the snow falls heavier, the Lancastrian line finally breaks apart in utter disarray. Small groups of panicked men scattering in all directions, fleeing for their lives with terror etched on their mud-streaked faces. The tired Lancastrians, limbs heavy from hours of combat, fling off their helmets and cumbersome armor in desperation, discarding them in heaps to run faster across the treacherous ground. But without such protection, they become easy prey, vulnerable to the slashing swords and piercing arrows of the pursuing Yorkists, who show no mercy in the fading light. Norfolk's troops, much fresher and unwearied by the initial clashes, pursue with swift and merciless speed, cutting down fleeing Lancastrians across what would later be infamous as Bloody Meadow, a vast field soon littered with corpses and stained crimson, where men are slain from behind in ruthless ambushes or even executed after surrendering in pitiful pleas for quarter. Before the battle even commenced, both sides had grimly issued orders to give no quarter, a decree born of deep-seated hatreds and the war's escalating savagery, and the Yorkists, fueled by vengeance after the long, grueling fight, are in no mood to spare anyone, their eyes hardened with the fatigues of victory. The Lancastrians suffer even greater losses in this chaotic rout than on the battlefield itself, their disorganized flight turning into a massacre as they struggle across the swollen Cock Beck, a rushing stream now choked with ice and debris. Yorkist archers race to high vantage points on the ridges, knocking arrows with practiced ease and loosing them into the helpless throng below. Shafts raining down like judgment from the heavens. Men struggling across the Beck's treacherous waters are dragged down by the relentless current, their heavy gear pulling them under with gurgles of despair, while others are trampled and pushed underwater by their own comrades, stampeding behind in blind panic, all rushing to escape the deadly Yorkist shots that whistle overhead. The dead begin to pile up in grotesque numbers along the banks, and historical chronicles solemnly state that the Lancastrians eventually fled across these makeshift bridges of bodies, stepping over the limp forms of fallen friends and foes alike in a macabre path of human remains. The merciless chase continues northward across the broader River Wharfe, which swells even larger than Cock Beck under the melt and rain, its currents roaring with foam. A vital bridge over the river buckles and collapses under the desperate flood of men scrambling across, planks splintering with cracks that echo like thunder, sending many plunging into the icy depths where they drown in agony, arms flailing against the unforgiving waters. Those few Lancastrians who managed to reach the relative safety of Tadcaster and York are swiftly hunted down in the shadowed streets and alleys, cornered and killed without remorse by vengeful Yorkist patrols scouring the countryside. In the end, the Yorkists suffer between 3,000 and 4,000 dead, their sacrifices etched into the annals of this bloody day, while the Lancastrians endure far worse, with 6,000 to 8,500 deaths, a toll that shatters their cause and echoes through history as England's bloodiest battle. Thank you.